Hi, my name is Desire Washington. I am going to base my presentation on the prefrontal cortex, which is also known as PFC. It plays a crucial role in cognitive behaviors. First, we're going to talk about the location. The prefrontal cortex is located in the anterior portion of the frontal lobes. It is located just behind the forehead. It extends from the very front of the brain to a region above the lateral sulcus. The prefrontal cortex can be divided into several functional regions. Here are the main three I've found through research. They're not in any specific order, but I'm going to be starting with the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, also known as VMPFC. This region is involved in processing emotions and decision making. It is also linked to social behavior and impulse control. Next is the orbital frontal cortex, which is also known as OFC. It is located above the eyes. It is involved in decision making and evaluating social and emotional cues. Next is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is also known as DLPFC. This area is associated with executive functions such as planning, attention, reasoning, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. It helps manage the flow of information to other parts of the brain. There are other possible subregions, which includes the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, and medial prefrontal cortex, or MPFC. The anterior cingulate cortex is associated with our emotional regulation, decision making, conflict monitoring, and error detection. The medial prefrontal cortex is associated with perspective taking, which is the ability to consider a situation from another person's point of view. It is also associated with self-preferential thinking, or the process of relation information to oneself. Lastly, social cognition, which is the ability to process, understand, and use social information to predict and explain behavior in social situations. Now we're going to talk about the development. Um, and this is what interests me about the prefrontal cortex. The brain develops from the back to the front. As mentioned earlier, the prefrontal cortex is located in the front of the brain, but it is one of the last portions of the brain to fully develop. The brain doesn't usually mature until our mid-20s. That is why younger people aren't great at making decisions. And as people age, the functions of the prefrontal cortex can decline, which leads to difficulties with memory and cognitive tasks for older people. The prefrontal cortex is pretty busy. It is responsible for several functions: decision making, when trying to decide or choose between courses of action; impulse control, or the ability to resist the urge to act on an impulse; working memory, the ability to hold information in your mind and use it while performing cognitive tasks; emotion regulation, controlling your emotional responses; social behavior, making ethical decisions and understanding social norms; and cognitive flexibility, shifting your attention or adapting to one's behavior. Connectivity. The prefrontal cortex is connected to many other parts of the brain, including the following: the limbic system, which involves structures of the brain such as the amygdala, and this connection helps regulate decision making and emotional responses. The thalamus, sensory associating cortex. Well, this includes the parietal and temporal lobe, and also other subcortical structures such as pons, the cerebellum, and more. Um, when there is damage in the prefrontal cortex, it can lead to a variety of emotional, cognitive, and behavioral issues. Here are some common disorders: schizophrenia, ADHD, OCD, and frontal lobe injuries, which can result in personality changes and poor judgment. And this wraps up my presentation. As you can see, the prefrontal cortex is very interesting. It has a lot to do with personality development. The prefrontal cortex helps with how we mature as we age. and it plays a big role in our decision making and emotional behavior. Thank you for watching.